It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce to you the next speaker. Although I don't think I need to introduce him, we're sitting about 1 kilometer from the Royal Ontario Museum Michael Lee Chin Crystal, one of the examples of his charity and giving back to the community. When Michael graduated from McMaster, he set off to work, and he realized early on that to achieve the goals he had for himself, he had to invest, and he made his first investment in himself. He borrowed some money, started investing in capital markets, and soon took that prowess and started selling that to others until he's now developed some of Canada's and the Caribbean's largest and most successful mutual funds like AIC, Caribbean Fund. He's chairman of NCB Financial Group and Portland Holdings. I was fortunate enough to know Michael early in the 1990s, before my wife and I first headed off to Toronto, then to Ottawa for our careers. I remember the last time we bumped into each other, actually, before we moved away. It was at Costco on Golf Links Road in Hamilton. It had recently opened.
Here comes the embarrassing part now. I'm sure, I don't know what's coming, but I just suspect there's some embarrassment coming.
I don't think it's embarrassment. I think it leads into what you're talking about today.
Okay.
Although, feel free to be embarrassed if you want. We spoke a little, and then 30 seconds or so, and then both couples continued on in our respective directions, and I pushing the shopping cart, because I drive the shopping cart just like the remote control. And Michael moved on without a shopping cart, which I found interesting. Fast forward about 10 years, I get a business magazine in Ottawa, and who's on the cover of the business magazine? Michael's beloved mother, Hyacinth, Gloria Chen. And the article is about the family-owned superstores in Jamaica. They started a business in 1964 of supermarkets. And I need to get this right. The article said that it had blossomed into the Super Plus supermarket empire. Michael wasn't shopping. He wasn't fearing change. He was studying. He and his mother saw an opportunity and made a prediction, which leads us to his investment philosophy: predict, plan, persevere, which he's going to expand upon today. He's also seen another opportunity and made another prediction. He's now investing in targeted radiopharmaceuticals, radiotheranostics. He's here to speak to us today. I think we should listen. Mr. Michael Lee Chin. Embarrassing?
Thank you very much, Peter. I thought you were going to talk about our days in the gym.
No.
Okay,
No.
that was embarrassing.
What happens with spandex stays in spandex.
Okay.
So, Michael, I stated into the introduction that you made your first investment in yourself. But to be successful, what are the other keys that you've focused on to lead you to your success?
Well, at the end of the day, I thought, this was now back in the 80s, early 80s, if I could figure out a way, if I could figure out a formula, I'm an engineer, for wealth creation, that if practiced, the only outcome is wealth, then that would be the highest value add I could give to my clients. So, being an engineer, there's a scientific process we go through when you have an issue that you want to solve. Number one, you observe. Number two, you create a hypothesis from your observations. Number three, you stress test the hypothesis. Number four, if it holds true, you codify it. And lastly, you hardwire it. So I went through that process with the question of the day. Is there a formula that if you practice consistently, the only outcome is wealth? So what I wanted to do was to find some common threads between every wealthy person in the world. People who created wealth, not inherited it or married into it. And back in the early 80s, I figured it out. Everybody who created wealth did 5 things. Actually, 8 things in this case. Number one, they own a few, not too many, high-quality businesses. Number two, they make sure they really understand those few businesses. The word understand is key to investing. Number three, those businesses are domiciled in strong, long-term growth industries. Number four, those the wealth creators, they use other people's money prudently. And lastly, they simply hold those few businesses for the long run. So that's what I initially discovered. In addition to that, everybody who created wealth practiced what we now call the 3 Ps. They predicted, they had a view of the future. Secondly, they were so confident in their prediction that they planned and they simply persevered. So predict, plan, persevere, the 3 Ps. So with that in mind, in the early 80s, I thought, okay, I need a methodology that will give me absolute confidence in my prediction. So what is that methodology? Demographics. Demographics. So here's how it worked. In 1983, I was 32 years old. And I'm a member of the baby boomer cohort, which are people ranging from who were born between 1964 and 1946. So I'm smack dead in the middle, nearly. I was born in 1951. So I thought, and this cohort is the largest cohort in the North American population, 30%. So whatever this cohort does, there goes the economy. So that was my hypothesis. So now in 83, I thought, okay, Mike, you're 32 years old. 83. What are 32-year-old families doing? Well, they're buying a home, they're buying a car, fridge, stove, they're consuming. So that logic led me, oh my gosh, we now have the largest percentage of North American population engaged in a single activity, consumption. Therefore, there's a consumption boom happening right now. And to be situationally aware is important. So, but wealth is not created by doing what people doing today, what everybody else is doing today. So wealth won't be created by investing in consumption. So therefore the question is, what will people be doing, what will baby boomers be doing 10 years from now? What will you be doing 10 years from now, Mike, when you're 42? Oh my gosh, you're going to wake up one day and say, oh, I'm now 42. I've been consuming all these years. I have 23 more years to retirement. I'm underinvested and undersaved. So I need to get hyper, saving and investing. So that aggregating from that, we now have the largest population of the North American population going to wake up one day and say, I need to start saving and investing. So there's a saving and investing boom. So how do you participate in that today? Well, you could buy shares in a bank. You could get loan losses. That's not a pure play. You could buy shares in an insurance company. You could get underwriting losses. That too is not a pure play. Or you could buy shares in a wealth management business, mutual fund management company. That is the pure play. So I went out and borrowed in 1983 $500,000 to invest in Mackenzie Financial Corporation in 83, about 1%. 4 years later, at $1 per share. 4 years later, that stock price was $7. And then I started an aggregating vehicle to buy up all the mutual fund management companies in Canada. So we became the largest shareholder of Mackenzie, Investors Group, Trimark, which is now Invesco, CI, AGF, etc., etc. So, in retrospect, in 83, the mutual fund management industry was $5 billion in total assets. Today it's $2 trillion, 400 times. Okay? So now today, I'm 73. So the question is, going back to demographics as being the predictor. So what are 73-year-old people thinking about? Oh my gosh, I want to have a long life and high quality of life. So we now have the largest percentage of the North American population thinking, oh my gosh, I want to have long life and good quality of life. Unfortunately, the older you become, the more likely you are to get cancer. So not only are we in a healthcare boom, the early innings of a healthcare boom, we're in the early innings of an oncology boom. So when you think of oncology, you think of three modalities. Number one, surgery. Number two, chemotherapy. Number three, external beam radiation. Both, the latter two, they're over 100 years, nearly 100 years old. So I thought, what is gonna, they're ripe for disruption. So we're in an oncology boom, so what's gonna disrupt them? TRT, or PRRT. So that is where we are today. That's how I came to the conclusion. PPP.
Right. I recall you once told me that you looked to the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, for your investing philosophy. You don't, and you've already said this, you understand businesses, right? You don't invest in stock, you buy companies, ideas, and invest in people. That makes predict very important. So yeah, I think you've kind of already touched upon this, but real quickly, what are the predictions you're making now, and what are you focused on?
Well, the predictions, two predictions. Number one, there's going to be, I just said it, cancer is going to be a huge growth. We're in a huge growth trajectory. And so that's number one. The second prediction is in 2015 at the Paris Accord, COP20, most countries signed up to be carbon net zero by 2050. But to be carbon net zero by 2050, you have to have the nuclear muscle. It's an imperative, you must. So the energy mix of today for most countries would be, I would define as a hub and spoke model. The hub would consist of fossil fuels. Spokes are renewables. The characteristics of fossil fuels that make them a great hub are, number one, they're always on. Number two, they're highly scalable. Number three, they're high energy dense, but they're dirty. So to get to carbon net zero, we have to supplant, we have to remove the fossil fuels and supplant it with some other energy source that are always on, highly scalable, and high energy dense, but clean. The only such source that is known to mankind is nuclear fission. So, that is coming. That has to be the energy mix of the future for every country, for them to get to carbon net zero. And there's a saying, whenever there's a shift in the dominant source of energy, there's also a shift in economic power. So, hence, the second tilt in terms of my investment focus would be in all things in nuclear, the transition to nuclear power, all things upstream of that, and all things downstream of that.
And that includes radiotheranostics. How are you engaged in that market today?
Well, I am engaged in, well, first I'm a director of a company out of Munich, Germany. The founder is sitting somewhere in the audience here. I met him in 2018. There he is, Oliver Buck. We met in Philadelphia in 2018, and he invited me to come to Germany to see his business back in 2018. I was blown away by what I saw and what he really engaged my mind to think, which is, this is the future of cancer care. And I believed what he said, so I bought into his company, ITM. ITM is now the epicenter of this industry, right? It has industry centrality because of the isotope distribution business, lutetium. So it's through my introduction to Oliver, and he invited me to become a board member of ITM, so I'm fully in. And then we have subsequently built an ecosystem around that investment in terms of different opportunities emanating from the knowledge we have developed from being associated with ITM.
And we're proud to be part of that ecosystem, but that covers predict. So plan, and let's bring it a little closer to home. Canada led the isotope supply for 70 years. At some points, 80% of the market. Why do you believe Canada is well positioned to lead the medical isotope production again? And what should investors, businesses, and governments be doing better to plan for that success? So the plan part.
Well, I'll just zoom out a little further than that question is implying. Ontario, specifically, Ontario is in a phenomenal position to be all things nuclear to the world. Ontario. We're totally vertically integrated, totally. From mines to IP, to clean energy, nuclear, and we're a nuclear-friendly province, which is very important. So there's less resistance there to a country like Germany, as an example. And in the isotopes, we led the world. Now, so what is going? So we lost that position. We lost that position briefly. And if we're going to regain that position, number one, there has to be a stronger PPP relationship with the government. And in fact, I would suggest that the focus should be as deep as, okay, let me roll back. Whenever you are at the beginning of a boom, that is a great opportunity to create a lot of wealth. So we in Ontario, if one way in which Ontario could really cement its position is to make its citizens wealthy by having its citizens participate in this coming boom. How? We have, a flow-through shares. Mm-hmm. So give tax breaks to investing in this area so we can have citizens invest at an early stage of a long-term cycle and be incented for it. So we just have to have our North Star being make Ontario the epicenter of the world for all things nuclear. Whether it's from legislation to taxes, and we are predicted. And I think this government is that way oriented already. We now have to plan by being fully in. Our universities will boom because there's a dearth of trained personnel in both the medical side and the clean energy side. So our universities should think PPP also. And because we could produce nuclear personnel for the world.
And we once did, and we can do it again, I think, if we follow your advice. So persevere. From your perspective, how can Canada sustain this excellence and maintain global relevance?
We can sustain it by realizing that we're onto something big. We're onto something big. We are the chosen one. We are the chosen one because we are vertically integrated. We have the history, we have the experience. Canada is the only tier 1 nuclear country that for the last 75 years has dedicated its nuclear IP to peaceful purposes. And we're Canada. So countries, the world has confidence in us. We're not saber rattlers. Right. So we have all the ingredient parts necessary for the world to look to us as a host. It's just for us to realize it and make sure we take full ownership of it. I'm of the belief that 99.9% of the problems that we face could be sourced to the principal agent problem, right? The principal agent problem. We don't take full ownership of things, because if we all took full ownership of everything, a lot of the problems that we are now faced would not be there. Because, in other words, there's a big difference. And what is the definition of a great principal, a great owner? Someone who takes responsibility. So we should take responsibility for this opportunity. We should realize it, take responsibility for it, have accountability. Second characteristic of a great owner is great owners take accountability. And thirdly, great owners either suffer consequences when things don't go right, or they reap rewards. So we need to take full ownership of it, realizing that this is the way that we can really make Ontario great, make the citizens of Ontario wealthy, make Canada take advantage of Canada's natural resources, and take advantage of our history of building wonderful nuclear IP for peaceful purposes. So we are perfectly positioned.
You seem very confident and proud in your closing remarks. How can we do more of that and be a little less Canadian when it comes to our prowess in this area?
How can we be a little less?
A bit more proud and confident in what we can do.
Yes.
All right. Okay, thanks. Michael, you're a true Renaissance man, always inspiring and insightful. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Peter.